Hey everyone, and welcome to the Open Minds podcast, where we try to open each other to different perspectives and remain open-minded to all incoming thoughts and opinions. I'm Cole.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Nural.
And we're high school seniors from outside Philadelphia. While listening, we hope you guys keep an open mind with us.
In a world that's too closed-minded, we're here to help you open yours, 'cause we're the Open Minds.
Hey everyone, I just want to let you know that this episode is part 2 of a 2-part series. We split episode 3 up into 2 segments for a couple of reasons. But if you didn't watch part 1, we released it last week if you'd like to listen. In part 1, we left off at Nural's topic, and right now we'll pick up with spinning the wheel. All right, let's spin the wheel.
All right. That was probably the closest wheel spin ever, but it is Jake on this topic.
Cool. Okay. So I want to talk about I want to talk about education in 2021 and how it's changed in kind of we are 3 high school students, how it has kind of influenced our lives, especially because we have seen probably the biggest educational shift in the history of the world. We've seen going from textbook, just all textbook and copybook writing, to online school, submitting basically everything through Google Docs, Google Classroom. We have seen that change probably more than any other generation in the history of education. So I think it's really important for us to have a conversation about this, and how technology influences our education, and the degrees of quality of how that dynamic changes. So I want to start off, I think we'll get to coronavirus and Zoom learning later, because I want to talk about the change of technology in education. So first, how would you compare your states of education from a lot more in-person teaching, in-classroom teaching-based education, to the dynamics of flipped classroom, and also just the growth of online resources, right? Like programs like the AP, right? Where teachers are given the same information across different schools, the same resources, they communicate with each other to give each other the same resources and similar tests, and we all take the same test in May. How is that dynamic changing your influence of education? And also all these online resources of how technology has influenced education to become so communal and less individual, and talk about that in kind of your respective educational paths.
I think for the most part, it has exponentially increased my educational learning, my ability to learn. And I think it's key to know when we use these online things to help teaching, it really does help teaching. When we use it to replace it, it doesn't. But basically, Google Docs, Google Drive, Word, everything, all my documents are organized, Taking it away from paper makes it so much easier. And programs like AP Classroom make it so much easier to review and learn. So I think this online almost repertoire of educational resources has helped me exponentially.
I would agree that it's helped me, all the information that you just cited there, Google Classroom, Google Drive, AP Classroom, they've helped me. But I would say, through other older people saying, writing notes, keeping paper and pencil is 10 times more efficient and 10 times more conducive to learning than is typing your notes or typing documents and all that. Yeah. So I would say that I never actually I don't handwrite my notes at all now. Mm-hmm. But I would say it helped me, the Google Drive and all that. But I wish kind of that I lived without it to see the difference in seeing that.
I think in a way we kind of did live without it. I think we're, our technological advancement over the past 30 years has been exponential. So 10 years ago when we were in like first grade or whatever, school looked way different than it does now.
You guys remember
And
those weird
also,
light projector things? Like the way
yeah,
that's how you used to put things on the board, and now we all connect to our phones, and the
yeah,
screens like light up with resources and files. Like I think we have seen that change. I think you're right.
exactly. It's just way different now. But despite that change, throughout my time learning over the past, this is our 12th year in the school system. Actually, I think technically the 13th because of preschool. But anyways, throughout the technically it's the
The
14th
14.
year. I'm sorry, kindergarten and preschool. I was trying to
Wait,
think
there's
about
2
that.
years of preschool.
I actually only took 1 year.
Really?
I took 1 year as well. Yeah, I took
Yeah.
1 year.
Pre-K 3 and Pre-K 4. Did you guys
No.
start school when you were 4 or 3?
4.
I started when I was 3.
Wow.
That's why you're dumb.
Well, good for you, Jake. No,
Well,
I'm kidding. That's why he's smarter than us.
Yeah.
Anyways,
no,
so
it's true.
throughout all this change, I've still taken handwritten notes. So I guess that's where we kind of differ. And that's why I can confidently say that these online things have aided me because I still take handwritten notes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't use handwritten notes ever anymore. And I don't think in my high school experience that I ever did.
Wow.
Except for one class, I would say. But
Haas or Javier?
Javier.
Oh, yes.
But
I take electronic notes in this. Are we name dropping? Yeah, you can name
We
drop.
are.
Who cares?
Mr.
Yeah.
Haas was our world history teacher, and Father Javier was our history of the church teacher. And it was like the hardest class you've ever taken. It'd be a week of straight lectures, and you'd take notes. And then the test would be the day after you finish the notes, and the test would basically be this: write down everything I said for the past week.
But but all of us loved the class. Like it is so weird.
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
all loved it.
It was very challenging. You know, it increased my abilities as a student.
And maybe
But
I think
you
that
see
coincides directly with the conversation, right? The merit of paper, like the pencil to paper, right? Of there was just such little technology in that class besides maybe your papers that was used, and that was probably one of my most academic classes I've ever taken, and probably the classes that kind of shaped who I am as a student most. I compare that to classes where it's kind of PowerPoint and online homework, right? You don't really learn much, right? And you're not enthused to be there, right? Like you not only do you not want to be there, but there's no emotion there. You know what I mean? I remember just the levels of engagement in history of the church, right? There's definitely merit there, but I also think I was also the student that went home and typed my notes. I don't know if you guys did that too. I typed my notes every single night, and I needed to. I still have those folders on my computer, but that technological organization is probably what allowed me to succeed most in the class.
see, I would say the passion that is in a teacher, at least, that is communicated through no technology is so much greater than the passion in a teacher that uses technology. And I feel like I never see a teacher who has something on the board and constantly using Kahoots, you constantly using Khan Academies, constantly
Slides
using
that you
kind of
don't
stuff,
make.
PowerPoints. Yeah, I don't see the passion in that, and I think when I learn that, I don't get that love for the subject that I got from Father Javier and through that course.
Yeah, that's a good point. In the sense that technology is a very easy way for teachers to get lazy. And I've seen it through my education system. I call it death by PowerPoint, when a teacher just stands at the PowerPoint and reads everything that's on the slides. But that's why it's key, I think, to use these tools as ways to improve and not replace. Because once you replace, it all goes to shit, I think.
100% agree with that sense. I think it's such a good supplement to education. It's a great way to put that learning into practice. But it cannot replace in any aspect, because that's when, like, at the end of this, I kind of want to make a ranking system called, like what you talked about when we started the beginning of the episode with. I kind of want to rank the different systems of education at the end of this conversation. But I think, like, it's so important that we recognize that we're not replacing our educational systems with PowerPoints that you don't even make, study aids you don't make, quizzes you don't make, and stuff like that. And just to go back to what Neural said, how that kind of passion of a class like Father Javier's kind of put into our education sophomore year, that's very true. But at the same time, imagine if every class that year was like that. Well, it was like Father Javier's. What would we? I would die. I would actually perish. Goodbye, 2003 to 2019. That was my life.
I would disagree completely with that. I think if every class was like that, not only would I be able to retain more information, not only would I be able to be more engaged in the classes, but I would be able to like understand what I'm learning and understand, like, if math was taught like that, if science was taught like that, if science was taught with like the same passion that Father Javier gave, I would be so like, even if it would be a lot of work, Jake, you're saying, yeah, you would. I mean, you would probably die, but other students wouldn't.
I would agree a bit, Neural. I think it's key to remember, though, the biggest issue with Javier's class was that we didn't actually retain any of the information. It was shoving it down your throat so you could throw it up on the test. But I would agree that passion is key to engagement in a class. And so the more passion you have, the more engaged I am. And I think passion is a lot more able to be seen when you aren't replacing teaching with technology.
That is, I believe, like the retaining information part was a flaw in his way of testing, not in his way of teaching, I would say. And I think if we introduce that way of teaching more and not that way of testing, like his tests were, like you said, regurgitate every note that you wrote through that past week.
To be a little more clear to everyone, his tests were just a blank blue book, and you just write everything that you learned over the past week. You write the whole 8 lectures that you did for the past week.
Yeah, and I think if we don't do that type of testing, but do his way of teaching, which was to just talk to you and just explain everything with the passion that he did. If we taught math like that, if we taught science like that, I feel like so many more students would be engaged in those classes.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think this, I mean, we said we were going to get here. We knew we were going to get here. But I think the biggest evidence for why replacing the classroom with technology doesn't work is the past year with online classes. How have you guys felt with that experience?
I have gone through a variety of kind of mindset changes through online education, and kind of how, like, it shows the ability of teachers to adapt, which is really important in education. But it also shows what doesn't work. It shows what doesn't work probably the most potently, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's also like it's been my experience that Zoom, as great as it is, and just how many features it can bring to your educational experience, it can't replace, but it can supplement, right?
Yep.
I think like flipped classroom and that whole dynamic of learning at home, it almost makes teaching and teachers kind of resource finders, not educators. Because they're not educating, right? If you need supplemental help outside of class, or when you're doing the practice of those subjects in class, that's when like teachers can educate. But if you're not teaching the lesson, if you're not saying this is how you do X subject, this is like the grammar breakdown of X like concept, it just makes it feels like, why am I in class anymore? Like, I can speak from experience. I missed last Monday or Tuesday. I missed last Tuesday of school absolutely nothing changed. I went in Wednesday, and not a singular educational dynamic was broken in that one day, right? I think school should like function in the way that like if I miss a day, I'm behind a day because there was value to that day of school that I missed. You know, there was something I lost by not being there. Like that in classroom experience had merit. It had value. I shouldn't be able to watch 5 videos at home, read an article at home, and then come in the next day and discuss the article, and that and just move on. You know what I mean? If there's merit to discussing the article, something that you learn something, like there's a loss there that like sometimes just doesn't happen in flipped classroom and online situations. And like when there's no merit, I know we're all feeling it right now. Why are we here? You don't want to be there, right? It is painstaking in every part, and it's painful for the teacher too, right? Because then they have to conduct and organize that class. And if they're trying to orient the educational path of 18 people that literally would rather be eating rocks, it becomes it's a bad dynamic for everybody. And I think like I know that we've tried, like we just have to talk to teachers and say, hey, I understand the goal here. There's better ways to do it. There has to be merit to our in-person, in-day learning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's key to remember too that, you know, with all the cons you described of online learning, that a lot of them apply to flipped classroom, I think. I mean, dare I say flipped classroom is online learning's little evil brother, you know? That's what I think. But Neural, how do you feel about online classes?
See, I think we come to this discussion with a level of kind of, I don't want to say entitlement, but that type of sentiment, because I would agree online learning is, I would say, the worst way to learn for me at least was definitely, I think thinking back to like the last time we were fully online, which was last March last year, that I did not learn a single thing that was of value in that entire semester of the second semester of our junior year. But I would say that when we discuss this, we're kind of coming from a place where we are used to having classes of where teachers are passionate about what they do, and teachers are like give value for the day in learning. But there are a lot of students out there in less developed countries, less developed areas who do not have that, who do not have classrooms that they can go to and expect a good learning experience. And I think although we can sit here and say that online learning is detrimental and like not very good, I would say that it has a lot of pros to it, which it gives access to education for so many more people. And I would say that is one thing why I would be, although it's not the best learning, I would say we still definitely need it.
I agree to that to a degree. I think there's still barriers to entry, especially with technology access, internet access. If you're talking about third world countries, it's so much more easier for people to walk down the street and enter their classroom than Zoom in, especially if there's no internet, there's no infrastructure, if there's no technology in that country. But when I brought up this topic, I wanted to get some stats about online learning, and I was absolutely blown away. Complete opposite of what I thought they were going to be, and complete opposite of kind of what I think our expectations are at Devon, and kind of how we perceive education, because I know a lot of people at work in public school and people at larger archdiocesan public school or private schools that actually really, really like online learning, and think that like they really hate being there in person. I think we all, the three of us, kind of agree that we like school. Like I like going to school, I like learning. And it's just like not people's things, but I'll read some stats that I got about people's idea of online learning. So students learn more. This is a study by the DIT Academy. It's like an online learning initiative. Might be a little bit biased because they are an initiative predicated on online learning. But they said we found participants that they learn 5 times more material in online courses than traditional face-to-face courses. Retention rates are higher. There's less time investment. The assessments reduce distractions, and it's a greener option. And I think you can't agree with some of just like the numbers, but the idea of retention and learning, I completely disagree with.
What online school are they doing?
I
mean,
have no idea.
My experience with online school is like diametrically opposed to what you just said. Retention's worse. Distractions are higher, in the system that I've gone through. And I think it's key to remember that online school for me, I don't know about you guys, but it's so draining. Like it's actually harder to pay attention for as long as you can, because it's on a screen. I think your attention span actually decreases.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also like the idea of I've definitely said, and sometimes I feel like I'll be like, I need an online day, right? Like I think when we say that, we're making online school synonymous with no school. Being like, I need an off day, right? When you're like, when an online day can kind of be used as a synonym for I need a break, that there's a disparity, a huge educational disparity there. Because like at our school we all wear uniforms. So I think like that routine of getting up, throwing on a shirt and a tie, and being in person, and like kind of just the way Devin orients their structure of education, there's just something there. There's something just inherent in that system that is beneficial and really can't be replaced. And I don't know if that sentiment applies to other private schools or other public schools, but I think in our experience, we got to hold that collective belief of the importance of in-person school and how much it's changed our educational standards.
Yeah, I would totally agree with what both of you are saying. I think retention is probably 10 times worse online. Distractions are higher. Attention span way less. I actually want to bring something up that I learned about recently. Back in 2017, I believe, there was a startup founded called Alt School. And this was kind of a technology-based school in which teachers would only assign lessons. They wouldn't be actually teaching, but they would only assign lessons to their students over a interface, like a computer. And these lessons were actually engineered by engineers, not by educators. And they personalized each lesson to each kid. And online school obviously allows that to happen, personalizing the education to each kid's needs. And the teacher's only real use there in that system was to supplement learning, is to, okay, if they're not understanding it, then I step in. But the main learning was actually through personalized lessons. And I think online school does allow that to happen, of personalized learning. I don't know how you guys would feel about that type of system.
So the system you describe, is that online, like for sure?
Yeah, 100%. It's 100% online. They actually go into a classroom where, like, they go to a classroom where it's 17 and there's like students, but they all work on a computer. Like they don't really talk to each other. They all work on a computer, and they do their personalized lessons for that day.
So I have a couple issues. I actually do like the personalization of it because everybody learns in different ways, and I feel like the issue with the school system, part of the issue, is that they paint everybody with the same brush. So I do like that aspect to it. But I feel like just because the lesson is from the experts and not the teachers, I don't think that makes it credible, or as credible as one might seem or think it to be. Because, for example, the best basketball coach isn't going to be the best basketball player. And just because you have the best player doesn't mean you're going to have the best coach. And then my second issue is that just like online learning, it drains all the fundamentally important parts of school and it keeps all the bad ones. I think what's actually more important, or equally important to what we learn in school, is the social interaction and how we socially develop and learn as individuals.
Yeah, I actually want to explain this a little bit further. The lessons are based through computer algorithms. Like computer engineers are creating like personalized lessons for that student based on their previous accurate, like their test grades and everything through that online learning. So it's not based from experts; it's like computer algorithms creating those lessons.
All right, I get it a little more. I want to stay open towards it, At first, though, I do feel it's a little, I don't know, just it's a little jarring in a way. It sounds overly complicated, but if it's fundamentally about personalizing the lesson, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so like revolutionary in a sense to my understanding of education. Just because I've just been so used to the classroom experience, like engaging with a teacher, and I value my relationships with my teachers probably more, like they're probably one of the most valuable relationships that I have, because I feel like that dynamic is like teachers see, like if you're like an academically oriented person, teachers are the people who are seeing what you do every single day. They see the value of your work. They see the effort that you put in, and they see like the results of that effort. So I think like that kind of replacement is, I think it would be, it just wouldn't be worth it for just someone like me. And I think like it's just like, it's gotten to the point also in education where I feel like I'm missing a class that teaches in the traditional way. Like I want a class where we like there's information on the board, the teacher's engaging with that information, and at home it's application, right? I feel like most of the time in most of my classes it's really the opposite, where I'm learning at home and applying in person. Like I think the online learning experience has, even in classrooms where people are in person, I think it's just taken over. I feel a sort of emptiness when I'm in school sometimes because I'm missing that engagement, and it's really sad. And I think like especially when you get in your second semester of senior year, I think it's more important than ever for every single assignment you receive to have a purpose and for you to be able to see that purpose, right? And when that is lost, it's almost crazy that we're like that people are expected to do the assignment.
Yeah, I agree. I think I want to go back to what Cole was talking about. Social interactions in school are another, I think, one of the most important things that school does. It puts you in an environment with people of your age and allows you to make friends and allows you to have some of the most life-changing experiences in school and with other people through social interactions. And I feel like online learning, unfortunately, doesn't allow that to happen. And I feel like if we are to go to like an elementary school today who is completely online because of the pandemic, I feel like we will see a lack of social skills, a lack of having any knowledge how to interact with somebody your own age, which is crazy. And I think schools have to be able to encourage that type of social emotional learning, which is found by being around other people.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'd say not only is it important because, we develop socially, but because we need social interaction. It is like the requirements of a human being to be healthy and sane is food, water, I guess shelter. Shelter and social interaction. It's required for us to keep living and thriving. So, and when you remove that, you're no longer thriving.
Okay, yeah. So like that in mind, like I kind of want to kind of organize this, right? Give me like I'll let both of you. I'm gonna give you like the topics they have to list and kind of put them in a ranking system And Cole, 5 is not good in this one. 5 is like
Okay.
you're gonna phase on that. So kind of organize fully like the traditional learning experience of just a teacher, paper and pencil, no technology, just like the teacher's education being instilled in you, then a technology integrated classroom, an online classroom, a flipped classroom, and maybe for the online classroom, let's differentiate that between being in person with an online teacher and being online with an online teacher.
Yes.
So I'll let Neural go first.
Yeah. So we have.
And wait, and give a little bit of a reasoning behind them too.
Yeah. I think least is being online with the teacher, like not like I forget what did you say, like being everybody being alone.
You think so? Everybody online
Yeah.
is the worst option. Okay.
Everybody being online is the worst option, I would say. Then I would say flipped classroom, where you're learning at home and applying in class. That's the second to last. Then is the online teacher with everybody else in person. And is there what are the other ones?
A traditional learning experience and technology integrated classroom.
Then I would say traditional learning experience, and then finally technologically integrated classroom. That would be my list.
So you would say a regular class. That's actually really funny because I think it kind of goes against what you were saying earlier. You're saying like I'm like traditional learning experience, like a hobby class versus like a classroom with like PowerPoint and stuff like that. Would you prefer if you use like PowerPoint and stuff?
Okay. No, I would change it, because what I assume when you're saying technologically integrated classroom, I would think that you're saying that you're using like allowing everybody to use the same files and be able to like, okay, I'm going to use Google Docs to submit this paper, and I'm going to use Google Docs.
Oh, okay. Let me change that then. I'm talking about the in-person experience, not the homework aspect of it.
Okay.
So like I'm talking about like technologically integrated classroom is, for example, PowerPoint videos in class, stuff like that. And traditional classroom is like it is a conversation almost. It is a lecture between people.
Yeah, then I would flip my top two. I would say that traditional is top and technologically integrated is second.
Cool.
Mine is a little different. I think it's tough to say which one would be better between traditional and integrated, because integrated can be done really well.
But it can also be done very poorly.
That's true. I'm going to say, all right, number one, I'm going to agree. I'm going to say traditional learning. From my experience, it's just very nice to have the teacher engaged, while I'm engaged. It's nice to have that almost community going on and people bouncing off each other. Number two, I would say technology integrated, right? Because it's still kind of in-person learning, but a little bit, with technology. And then big gap between these two here, like huge gap moving on to number three. It's flipped classroom would be number three. Flipped classroom is terrible. Compared to these other two, it is like the worst way of learning, because it's the same as online class, but the only pro is that you're in person.
As a quick comment, I think that's why flipped classrooms transition so well to online learning, because they are very, very similar, right? I think that's when you get like disparity between that adaptation level, because flipped classroom is so versatile. It can transition well, but that definitely doesn't mean it's a good system. So
Exactly. Yeah, so flipped classroom's number three, because there's no engagement there. And the key to learning and learning most efficiently is being engaged. And that's just not there with flipped classroom. Number four is actually fully online. And number five is an online teacher and an in-person kids. And the reason I say that is because I have an online teacher now and we're all in person, and they are single-handedly the worst classes I've ever taken. It's just the reason I say that is because there's so much more distraction when I'm in person and the teacher's online. So I'm not paying attention. I'm having fun in class, which is good. As we talked about, social interaction is important. But when you get down to the point of a classroom, when your teacher's online, it kind of doesn't follow that point, and you don't really learn about what the teacher wants you to learn.
We have the exact same list. Funny enough, huge disparity in between the third and the second and the third, and it's the same exact reasons. I think it's because we take the same classes, basically. But I would definitely agree. I think and I think a common theme of all three of our lists is the further the teacher gets from the student, the worse the class gets. The further that distance grows, the less you want to be there, the least you want to be there. The less you want to be there, and the less engaged you feel, the less motivated you are. And I honestly think that this educational realization, right, of us being able to formulate okay, I've been through a trillion years of education. That's all I know. That's all I've been doing is learning, right? And I've been through so much that now I can formulate my thoughts, right? And I think that's really the root of senioritis, what people like to call it. I think it's just academic realization that there are classes that don't have merit to them, and when you're unenthused to do them, I think sometimes it's qualified as senioritis, but it is not the fault of the student. I think it is the fault of the system and the realization of that system not having value, right? And I definitely agree. Just with what you were saying, this the further that connection, because I'll be honest, our school has some of the best teachers in possible. I hear stories from other schools. I've heard lessons from other schools. I'm just where did this person get their teaching license? What is this individual doing, right? But we have a luxury at Devon where not only would I consider myself friends with almost every teacher I've had, I would consider myself lucky to be in those classes, right? I appreciate every relationship I have with those teachers. I think when you have that respect and that relationship with someone, you want to learn from them. I want to listen to them. I want to engage in their classes. I want to converse with them. I want to have a conversation about what we're learning about. And the further, if you throw a 2-minute video in between that class dynamic, it makes it feel so impersonal. And I think there's obviously I'm assuming the traditional classroom is the hardest way to orient a classroom, because it's so much easier to throw a video or throw a podcast or a PowerPoint up, and teach using that. We also have to look at our graphs or our rankings, because I'd say that's also hardest to easiest, right? I think it's the exact same thing. Maybe flip classroom would be the easiest, because you don't have to teach. But I think it's important to remember the difficulty in the educational experience. But I think that's what makes it, and that's what makes it so valuable for the students. But yeah, in summary, the further you get from the student and the teacher, the worse the class gets, in my opinion.
I have a little comment. Where would you guys put alt school, the startup I mentioned? Because in the article I read about it, it said that this would be the future of education. Where would you guys put alt school in that list? I would put it at the bottom.
I hope it isn't. At the bottom, maybe at the bottom, maybe after flipped. No, I'd put it at the bottom. You convince me.
I was about to say the same thing. I think I'd put it at the bottom.
Yeah. I think it's kind of sad that's going to be, obviously.
Wait, that's the future of education, of just sitting and everybody's just staring at a screen from experts in a field.
Because it is so personalized, people are saying that is the future of education, because each student is getting the exact lesson that they deserve instead of having a general lesson for the entire class.
It does sound like a good idea. I think I'd have to know more about it, though, to officially be this is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know if it'd be a good thing. I'd have to see it in practicality, I'd have to do it.
I'm going to just use another teacher example real quick. I know we've had Mr. Sheehan, and this is such a good example of a classroom that conversation makes the class every single day. I love the conversation dynamic in that class, right? Because it builds respect for the classroom, and you must build a community, right? An environment, an ecosystem inside of that community where Neural gives example, we'll look at Ian for like the academic comment, and then we'll branch off of that, and like that. There's an ecosystem and a community established, and it's just such a fun educational dynamic that you learn from, and like it builds respect for the teacher. Like I love hearing Mr. Sheehan's experiences with the books and his life and his take, and like it makes me respect him more. It makes me respect the books more. It makes me respect the class more. It makes me respect the kids in the class more, and like that can't transition online that well just because there's that feeling that's lost.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but like it's I don't know, it's very disheartening to see that kind of that dynamic go away, because they're going to be the people who are learning on all classroom will be the leaders of the world in 60 years. And it's sad to see that go.
Yeah, it is. To be clear, everyone, Mr. Sheehan is our English literature teacher, and basically his classroom is really just a conversation. He sits at the head of his desk and just talks with us. Maybe he'll bring one or two things up on the projector, but it's never something that becomes class. For example, a video. We don't sit there and we watch the projector. We use it to kind of stimulate the conversation. So, All right, so we'll leave it at that, and I guess we'll move on to my topic, which is the ends justify the means. Just that kind of philosophical belief. You guys know what that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it's a long debated philosophical question wondering if an evil action can be justified through a positive outcome. It actually kind of applies to our conversation in part 1 about China and taking DNA from the consumer to lead to technological advancement. Anyways, it was recorded first in a book or a political essay by Niccolo Machiavelli called The Prince. Isn't that such an Italian name? Niccolo Machiavelli. Yeah, he was a philosopher, and in 1532 it was kind of founded, this idea. It's also kind of known, if you do believe it, that the ends justify the means, as consequentialism. And that's the belief that an act's morality should be judged by its consequences. So before we get into it more, I just want to know your initial thoughts on the ends justify the means.
I feel like in most scenarios I would disagree, but there are this is kind of moral subjectivism, which is changing your morals based on the situation. I would kind of go with that argument that it's, in most cases I would disagree with it, but in some cases I would say that I would say ends justify the means.
Jake, what do you think?
I don't think saying I don't think it can be used as a moral excuse of like a bad action. Here's the thing, it's so subjective based on what you qualify to be bad, because I know there are religious principles to it that I personally don't agree with, and I'm like, well, that's not like a lot of the people, a lot of the time it can be used like about a conversation of like using like embryos for research purposes, of saying like, yeah, there's scientific advancement, but at what cost of using an embryo. Like, I think when you kind of make the bad in that conversation subjective, it's kind of hard to have a conversation about it, because like you don't think that it's a bad end to justify a good mean. But I like to hold the notion that good must equal good, and like bad can't lead to good.
So would you say, Neural, you draw a line between where the ends do justify the means and where they don't? Jake, would you say there is a line like that?
Yeah. I just don't know where to draw it.
Yeah. I would agree. I do think actually, I would disagree. I don't think there's a line where the ends do justify the means. I don't think the ends ever justify the means. And I think it's almost a little dangerous when you give into that. Because when you do believe something like that, you can do whatever you want as long as, your action is justified in your point of view. And I believe every bad action, nobody does it without good intent. Or no, that's not true. Nobody does it without a good result in mind. People don't just do bad to do bad. And even, psychopaths, doing a bad action, something like that, has a good result in their end. So that's why I think it can't be true.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, no, not personal. Cool, I'm subscribing to you. I actually agree with you. I think I'm thinking historically of it being used to justify false wars. I'm thinking of justifying invasion, justifying economic growth on the perpetuation of the unfair oppression of others. So I think it can be used to literally make anything okay, and I think we should not that shouldn't be promoted at all.
Yeah, I feel like although it can be used to do that, that's where I think there needs to be a line drawn. I think everybody knows where that line is, but there's no space where you can say, okay, this is where the line is. But there are to justify wars, like you were saying, Jake, and everybody knows that was wrong, and everybody, that's where I would say that I would still use that moral philosophy in some cases. But in most cases, I would say, okay, that is too far.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, Naral, that there's a line. My line isn't about if the ends justify the means or not. My line is whether you do the bad action for the good result. So let me kind of explain my view on this topic, and you guys tell me what you think. I think the ends never justify the means. But I believe that sometimes you have to do a bad action to get a good result. So the evil action is let me explain. Okay. The evil action is a means to a good end, but it's not an end to a mean. The action you did is still not justified, but it had to be done. And I think there's a line where that's true. And I think there's a line where that's not true. So basically what I'm saying is nothing's justified. The bad action you do for the good result is not justified. But in certain scenarios, that bad action has to be done.
Like you're saying, it's not okay that the action was completed, but it was a necessity. Like it is still morally wrong and it cannot be justified in any sense, but its completion was still requisite.
Yes, exactly. Okay, gotcha. So basically, and if you believe in a divine God or whatever, you're not forgiven for the action. But as a person, I feel at times, in certain scenarios, you have to do it. And it's even in a small scale, sometimes lying to somebody about a surprise birthday party, for example. You have to do that. But it's still evil and bad.
Okay, so my only qualm with that type of reasoning is that, would you say then, let's say when the atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, right?
It's funny that you mention this, because I was going to say there's one huge example of the ends justify the means in U.S. history, and it's that.
Yeah, and would you say, that you're saying that's an evil action in itself, right? So do you believe those people who said, okay, we should do this, are criminals? Do you think they did a criminal act by killing all these people through an atomic bomb?
I wouldn't say, I guess they're criminals. I think they did a morally bad thing. But the reason I say they're not criminals is because, all is fair in love and war. We were in the midst of a war. So if they're criminals for dropping an atomic bomb, then we were already criminals for killing enemy soldiers. You know what I mean?
Wait, so
killing is... Go ahead.
Do you think all is fair in love and war? No, the Geneva Conventions and the establishment of war crimes. I don't know. I feel like that's nuclear warfare is not fair in war.
No, I would agree. I would agree that things aren't fair, but it's not up to the government to draw that moral line. That's why I would say these people aren't criminals, because if they are criminals, they've been criminals just because they started a war.
Yeah, I think also when you say the word criminal, it's referring to somebody who can be written up against a penal code and can be tried in a judicial system. And I think when you're talking about ethics and morality, it's important to distinction wrong actions from criminals.
Yeah, I think he's right. Because it's not really the government's place to, I guess, legislate on morality. So to answer your question, I wouldn't say they're criminals. I would say they did a bad thing. The question is, was the bad thing the thing they had to do? The question to me is not was it justified, because it never is.
See, I think another thing is, what are you defining as a necessity? Because that again can be subjective. That brings the same subjectivity that you're saying is just the word justify brings. Like you can justify anything, but you can also say that anything's a necessity. That's what I would say.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't think of it that way. That the word necessity can be subjective and manipulated just like justify is. So I don't know. I would say, when you see it. I know that's not the best answer, but I think everybody draws their own line, and I know it when I see it. Sometimes when I'm lying, I'm like, nope, this isn't the best thing to do. So, I say the truth. So I'd say, I don't know, follow your own moral compass in scenarios like that.
I agree with that.
So would you say that there is this is kind of a bigger debate. Do you think that comes into objective morality? Is there an objective morality that says the ends don't justify the means? Or is there do you believe that?
I think I partially do. And I think that's why I believe the ends justify the means in the way, or I have the perspective I do on the ends justify the means in a way to align with that philosophy that there is an objective morality. Because I feel like there is, because if we're thinking about morality at all, like, isn't that almost a testament and evidence that there is such thing?
I don't know. I would disagree. I think like understanding the idea of what morality is like, I don't think that's enough to like prescribe to the existence of an objective morality, because I think like a lot of the times it has to do with like just the way different cultures perceive action, and like when you have like the vast majority of people who perceive something as
objectively immoral, that is like in of itself subjective. And I think like there are boundaries and kind of lines that you draw based on like a completely individualized standpoint. And I think like once you start to incorporate people's like individual subjective views into a definition of objective morality, it goes against the very nature of what objective morality is, and maybe it can lead to like mob mentality in a sense. And I don't think like I think it all comes down to how individuals perceive their actions and others.
So would you say, Jake, that that you believe that there's subjective morality, that everybody's morality is their own?
Yeah. But
don't you?
I think like everybody can perceive their morality differently, and like I don't think there are things that are objectively moral or immoral. I think it has to do with everybody's perception of morality. And like what you think could be immoral could be completely moral to somebody else. You know what I mean? And I don't think that any person's say or the communal response to that perception of morality is fair game or objective. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just impossible. It's impossible to say.
So you're saying that there's no objectively moral things and objectively immoral things? Are you saying that everything is subjective?
Yeah.
I see. I would disagree with that. I feel like there are certain actions that are objectively immoral. I don't know how you feel about that.
I agree with Neural 100%. And let me tell you why. Because I feel on the ends of the spectrum, say the spectrum is good and bad, are the very extreme side of good, we see it perfectly. And at the very extreme side of bad, we see it perfectly as well. For example, we know giving food to a homeless person is a really good act. That's something we see perfectly. And on the other end, bad, we know killing someone is a bad action. That's something we see perfectly. But as those two kind of meet, I feel it gets blurry. And that's kind of where subjectivity can play a role. But I feel there are objective moralities. And that's why Congress does legislate on certain things that they do, because there is some objective moralities, like murder is wrong.
I guess that makes sense, but like I don't know. I feel like it's only because like a community, like the vast majority of individuals perceive murder as being wrong. Like I think murder is wrong, but I feel like it's impossible to say that's objective. I think it's just objective by nature.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that murder is like right, but that just means like it's. I think it's unfair to say that like it is an objective truth that it's wrong, because like that would mean that I think if we say that's an objective immoral thing to do, then I think that means that it would be perceived as wrong without like human interaction.
So you would say we can't classify murder as an objective immoral act?
I don't think it has anything to do with murder. I think you just can't you can't
Do
say
it with any
anything
action.
is objective. Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
I feel like I don't know why though. Like I feel like it's just impossible to say.
Mm-hmm.
Just based on the way we perceive morality, especially like when you bring religion into it, right? Like if you believe in a God that like there are, I'm sure there is a culture in which they believe in a higher power that thinks murder is okay, right? Let's talk about I don't even know if I want to talk about, it's a very nice topic, but like jihad in Islam, holy war, perception that war can be justified on behalf of religious conversion, right? Or like in defense of religion. Like, is that, or talk about like sacrifice? Like people used to sacrifice people in the name of religion. Like they thought that was completely morally sound. Like I think it has to do with human perception of morality over time and how our standards change. But I don't think it's a result of things being yes or no by nature.
Yeah, I agree with what Jake, you're saying there about our objective morality kind of changing with the like over time. But I would still say that there are objectively good acts and objectively bad acts, like Cole was saying, that on the extremes, that there are murder is objectively wrong, and murder and helping other people and giving people food to the homeless is objectively good. What I do want to say is kind of connecting two topics that you've brought in, Cole. The people of North Sentinel Island, those people who have not been subjected to regular society for 60,000 years. Would you say, Jake, that they are not bound by the same moral philosophy that we are bound by? Yeah.
I don't think so. Like, I think we can establish moral law. Like, I personally believe that there are moral laws that can be broken? Yes. But I don't think, like, if somebody else doesn't believe those moral laws, who am I to say, like, my sense of morality is higher than yours?
True.
Who am I to say my moral system is less, like, it is stronger, more valuable than yours? I think I can't say that. That's putting myself on a pedestal of, like, kind of a moral high ground that I don't have.
That's a good point. But I think it's key that on the ends of the spectrum of good and bad, that we almost can do those things, you know? I feel like I couldn't imagine living in a world where, you know, someone does justify murder or someone does say giving food to a homeless person is wrong. I think we should really look at it. This is how I look at it. And Jake, you did say that our morality standards have changed throughout time. But I don't think that is because morality standards just change as we evolve. I think it's because, you know, we're look at it like a foggy day, you know. Everything's really foggy at first, but as we turn the lights on, you know, we start to see more. That's what I would relate it to. Clearing the fog is our moral development, not just changing because we've changed. It's almost like we're exploring something that's always been there.
Yeah, but I don't know if you could kind of credit that to the complete, like you said, like one of the most absolute things is murder, and I agree with you there that like murder is an absolute thing that you can't. I don't really know. I think it's like, to me, my subjective morality is something that can't be broken. But there are people like jihad is still a part of Islam. You know what I mean? And I can't say that like that is immoral, because like I can say to me it is, but I can't say that it is an objective immorality that like that ideology, that belief is subscribed to, right? I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I'd say that there are things that are objective right now, and there are things that are subjective. Because as I said, between the spectrum, I think it gets blurry. But I think to say that there's a subjective morality, I think almost it's a little dangerous, because then literally anyone can do whatever they want as long as it falls under their moral standards.
Well, everyone's still bound by their morals, like by their own moral standards, and like that doesn't change that the legality of things. You know what I mean? Like, say there is objective morality right now, right? It exists. People can still do whatever they want to do and classify it under their own subjective morality. People can say that they don't subscribe to objective morality. Like that doesn't like it. Just because we can say that it exists doesn't mean that other people can say that. It doesn't mean that they can use their like subjective morality to justify the actions. Like people are still going to do what they believe is moral, like regardless of the existence of objective morality.
Yeah, the difference though there is that in the subjective morality world they're justified, and in the objective morality world they're not.
Well, why? Who's to say? So say objective morality exists, but I believe in subjective morality still. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what if like that I feel like that dynamic in that instance it doesn't exist, right? And like who like are humans drawing the line on objective morality? Who's like I don't know. I think human perception.
That's a
of
good
anything is
point.
wrong.
That's a good point. I would agree that, you know what, I probably wouldn't trust any single human person to say this is what's wrong and this is what's right. Here's like the full book of how actions are on the scale of morality. To me, I feel there is an objective morality, but it's something that we'll never fully explore. You know what I mean? It's almost like exploring the universe. We're never going to get every inch. You know, a lot of stuff is still super blurry. And I feel like there is an objective morality that we are continuing to explore, but it's never going to be fully there. And that's where subjectivism exists in morality, the places that we are unaware of their moral standard.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting more and more convinced by Jake's side of the argument that, like, at the end of the day, we are humans that evolved from apes. Who are we to say that that there is an objective morality that says even the most, what I think subjectively, that the worst thing in the world is like murder? Who am I to say that that is objectively wrong? You know,
Who are you to say that murder is objectively wrong?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we're not like we're putting ourselves on a pedestal, as Jake said, that you know, our morality is better than somebody else's version of the morality, even though we're technically just the same. You know,
that's where I would agree. I totally agree with that, like 100%. Sometimes claiming there is an objective morality makes you, you know, say something like that, makes you take the moral high ground that you never had the right to take, you know? So that's why I say, I go back to the fact that I think there are clear things and there are unclear things. When you start taking the moral high ground on unclear things, then, you know, you become distrustworthy and like, who are you to say your moral scale is better than mine in the unclear things? But in the clear things, I think it's, you know, you can't not say that something's objectively wrong. I get what you're saying, like, who am I to say murder's wrong? But, you know, I don't know how to describe it. Like, just human dignity, I think, is like an inherently valuable thing. And so I feel in any scenario, of course murder's wrong.
Yeah, but people, like, what if somebody doesn't believe in human dignity?
Well, that's my point, is that they're, like, you know, they're wrong.
But why? Like, why would they be...
Okay.
Like, then I feel like you're saying, like, my morality is better than your morality. Because you're saying, okay, well, what I believe, what I've been taught, what I've been subjected to through my life trumps whatever you've been subjected to in your life, whatever you've been
Yeah.
taught, whatever that.
That's a good point. But I think it's a really easy thing to say that, you're right in a scenario when it comes to murder, because again, murder is so clear to me. I guess not as much to other people, but to me, I feel it's so clear that, in a way it is okay to take that. But I do get what you mean. It's a shaky road.
Mm-hmm. And disclaimer, it is very clear to me and Nural that murder is not okay.
Yeah.
But I don't feel comfortable making that moral decision for other people.
Wait, you don't feel comfortable saying that murder is wrong objectively?
No, I don't feel comfortable making the assertion that others can't perceive murder. Like, I feel like its existence is. Let me rephrase that. So I don't think that I can make the moral decision for other people that their perception of morality is wrong by nature.
I agree. You can't say that.
I think that goes against the existence of objective morality.
I would agree with that. It's definitely a shaky field because now I feel like almost like I'm taking the wrong path by objectively stating anything about morality, because in a way you are saying, this is the right way to go, which I guess you never know. But I feel there is an objective morality, whether we know it or not. Like, whether what I'm saying is completely wrong or not, I feel like there is something out there. I'm not saying I know what it is. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying I feel it exists.
Don't you think that has to be written by a higher power, though?
Yes. Yeah. I would say so. I believe in a higher power. And
so do you think, so the existence of it, so you're saying it exists, but we don't know what it is?
Exactly. Okay. It is up to humans.
Then why can we say murder is one of them?
I don't know. You're kind of convincing me here, because I was about to say it's up to humans to guess what that objective morality is, and then it kind of just becomes subjective,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is why I feel like what Jake was saying earlier about what everybody agrees on to be objectively moral and objectively immoral is what kind of is objectively moral and objectively immoral.
Yeah. And that doesn't even mean that it is objectively moral, because people could agree that murder is fine. You look at dystopian societies, like in the book The Giver, where they kill all the older population, they agree that that's okay, but, we don't see it as so. So,
let's
kind of...
We don't even have to look at dystopian books. Let's look at, what people used to do to gay people and mentally disabled people in, the 50s. It's a part of human history of us drawing the line of you get to live and you get to not live. And I think
even slavery, I would say, is an example of that, is where everybody was okay, this is morally okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's exactly my point, though, is that we're exploring more of the fog. We're exploring and discovering things that are wrong. We're developing morally as a society, I think.
Yeah, I think the exploring the fog analogy, although I understand what you're getting at, I think it's just so much more drastic than that, because it's like if you were exploring the fog in a desert and you walked a little bit further and it was a jungle. You know what I mean? We've gone from Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of this country, died in a duel over an argument. People used to just kill each other, and they were no, I disagree with you. And that was recent. That wasn't a long time ago. People used to, 150 years ago, people owned other humans. And
but that's my point. It doesn't make it okay. They're not justified for owning slaves. Just because everybody else was doing it. Just because morally as a society was accepted doesn't mean that they're justified.
They subscribe to an objective reality, an objective morality that action was okay. And I think when you listen to objective morality, or when you draw that line, just by the nature of time, it's going to change, and things that you're claiming are moral are going to they'll be perceived as immoral in the future, and that is. And I know that's what you're saying about the fog analogy, but I think the fog analogy almost goes against objective morality. because like you're saying it changes, it's subjective. You know what I mean? Or are you saying it's only objective to a higher power?
I'm saying with the fog analogy, yeah, that there is an objective existence, whether or morality, whether someone knows it or not, but we're just exploring it, and it's never something that can fully be explored.
Do you think
But
we can
honestly, you
explore
guys
it all?
yeah, like it's like I use this analogy all the time. It's through shooting for the stars that we land on the moon. We're reaching for infinity, and we still make progress, but you never fully get there.
Mhm.
But I don't know. You guys are convincing me a bit, especially in how complicated and interwoven and paradoxical this topic is. So I wouldn't even say I necessarily am 100% for an objective morality anymore. I don't think I can say that because who am I to say what an objective morality is, which I don't think I have any authority there. So what I would say is just a final message is like stick to your gut and what you think is right. Because I feel like we do have a feeling, each and every one of us, of what we believe is right and wrong. And I think if we stick to that, then that's the right way to go.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, but I want to talk about it more in practice. Can you give some kind of?
Yeah, I actually have
scenarios?
some scenarios speaking
cool.
about
Okay.
that gut feeling. I only have 3, so they'll be short. But so basically, just tell me what your gut thinks with this. The first one is about Jean Valjean. You guys know who he is, right?
No.
Yeah.
Please explain that one.
You were in AP Lit when I gave my presentation on Les Mis. So that's
did
just
not,
means
okay.
you weren't paying attention.
Yeah,
He's the main character in Les Mis. And basically, this is his scenario. You guys tell me what to do. Your sister is starving, okay? You're homeless. You can steal a loaf of bread from a vendor on the street in order to feed your sister. Do you steal it?
I'm still not left bread.
No, wrong.
I would say, yeah, I would steal it. I would steal it too.
I would also steal the bread because, again, although stealing is, in my opinion, wrong, it's something I have to do because, my sister is starving. Next example is another kind of pop culture figure like Robin Hood. This isn't exactly a story, but let's say, it's very like it. Let's say you're working in a very rich person's house and you live in a very poor community. You can take his money or you have the ability to, because you work in their house, to take their money and redistribute that to your poor community. What do you do?
I steal the money.
Is that all of the money or is that some of the money?
It's some of the money. It's not all of the money.
I would probably not steal it either way.
I'm with you. I would actually probably not take the money.
Really?
All right. Yeah, just because, I don't know, something about that one, again, back to the gut feeling, makes me feel worse than the loaf of bread one.
Yeah, my thing about the gut feeling is kind of still shaped by our morality in who we what we're taught and what we've seen, what we've experienced too. So is the gut feeling even right? I don't know. I would
don't
still
know.
have that little.
That's
inkling in
that's
back
the
of my
whole
head.
thing about, subjective morality. Is it right, even though you think it is? But what else can you tell people besides to do what they think is right? All right, so anyways, here's the last one, the last example. So you are the president of the United States. Whoa. 5 U.S. Marines are kidnapped by a group of terrorists outside of the country. They claim that they will kill all the Marines unless you release all remaining 20 members of their terrorist group who are currently held in federal prison in the United States. What do you do?
I don't negotiate with terrorists.
What's that from again?
No idea. I've heard
That's from something. Nara, what would you do?
So your options are either to sell, give the 20 terrorists in federal prison or allow them to die. There's no in between there.
Let's put a time limit on it. You have 1 hour.
And
it would take like 30 minutes to fly a jet over that country. So,
okay, I would say, I don't know. I feel like I would release the terrorists.
Me too.
Really?
What would you do, Jake?
I'm surprised by that. No, I would tell the terrorists to go after themselves and get my Marines back.
You would try. So you would try all means necessary, and if they fail, you tried your best.
Oh, no, we're talking about the U.S. Marine Corps. We're not losing to terrorists.
No,
Wait. So are you releasing the terrorists?
Wait, so the only two options are release the terrorists or let the Marines die?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Oh, no, that's not realistic at all. That's not realistic. Bad scenario. But I would release the terrorists. If I had to release the terrorists.
I would also release the terrorists.
Yeah, no, but that's not what would happen.
I don't know. I think there are scenarios like that the president or any leader has to deal with. There are ethical conundrums like that where it really is.
Yeah, but I feel like another military operation could save the Marines and kill the terrorists.
Yeah, that's a good
point.
Try first, but if only given those two options, I would release terrorists.
Yeah. Save the.
Yes. Okay, that's what I would do. You're right. They aren't as black and white as this scenario. Ethical situations aren't as black and white as this scenario makes them out to be. But yeah, let's move on to thoughts on the cast.
Thoughts on the cast. Thoughts on the cast. Thoughts on the cast.
What were your guys' thoughts on my segment, technology and its influence on education?
I think Neural kind of showed me the pros of online learning because of the ability of, personalized learning, which I think is really an important thing to explore. And I, put all the online learning types of learning at the bottom of my list, but, Neural kind of reminded me that there are some pros to it that other types of learning, traditional learning, does not have.
Yeah, I kind of went the opposite route on that one. I think what I got from the conversation was that we need to allow teachers to teach, and there isn't really a substitute for that, and we need them to be the main educators and not some online video or resources like that.
Yeah, I definitely I pulled things from both of what you guys were saying, and I think what I mentioned at the end of my thing, I really think we have to make a unilateral effort to bridge the gap that's been building between teachers and students, and how technology has become an excuse for that gap. And I think it's important just to remember how important our relationships are in education with each other, with students. We benefit each other's learning experience. We learn from each other. And I think that we should be recognizing the benefits of online classroom. It's cheaper, it's more sustainable, it keeps people safe in times like this, and it's necessary at some points because it is. But I think once these unprecedented situations are done, then we start to not break away from, but move gradually back to the traditional educational ways that we've become so familiar with over the rest of our lives. Because I think these are online learning from classroom. I think they are designed for unprecedented times. They're designed for times when you need them, but they cannot replace the systems we have.
Yeah, so what'd you guys think about my topic about the ends justify the means, and kind of a objective morality?
Yeah, what I got from it is that there is kind of what Jake was saying, and kind of opened me up to that kind of side of the argument, that we are all kind of subjective in our ways of thinking. But Cole, I think what I was getting from you is it doesn't mean it's not objective, right? There is some things I would say that are objectively wrong, but that is still subjective to me.
Mm-hmm. I started off very much on the side of subjective morality, and that like moral actions can't be deemed immoral by like other people, because of how humans perceive morality throughout time. But I definitely like, Cole, you made me like kind of realize how just because like it was tolerated once in time doesn't mean that it was objective morality at that time. Like objective morality has existed and has been finite throughout all of human history and will be. And if you believe in a higher power, like that is kind of shaped by that higher power, or shaped by like the universe, something like that, like something that we can't change or influence. And like although we'll never understand it, like there's parts of it that we can recognize and understand to kind of shape the way we act in a moral way. So I'm more open to the idea of things being like wrong or right by just the way nature exists.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say kind of the opposite for me, is that you both kind of showed me the complications of making a claim that there is an objective morality. Like, who am I to say that and define what it is? I really have no place doing that, and you kind of made me realize that. So, yeah, that's all for today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can find me on Instagram at cole.2.kelly. And you can find Jake on Instagram at jake.lorenz. And you can find Neural nowhere because he doesn't have a life. Thanks, everyone. We hope to see you next week, and remember to always keep an open mind.
In a world that's too close